I like people to know that it doesn't mean you have to be brewing complicated, bitter teas and drinking them all day. It doesn't mean you have to understand tinctures. It can be a supplement on your shelf next to the rest of your supplements. That can be how you start with herbalism. And if that's as far as you ever go, that's fine too. So it really, the barrier to entry can be lowered, all the way down, and we can just dip a toe in. It can be that easy.
You are listening to The Dr. Haley Show, the podcast dedicated to helping you optimize your health. Each episode, there will be an interview or a message to help you discover better health. We will be featuring health radicals on the show to bring new ideas to the table, as well as doubling down on key fundamentals to support you living your best life. Your host is no other than the founder of Haley Nutrition, Dr. Michael Haley.
This is the Dr. Haley Show podcast. I'm Dr. Michael Haley, your show host. And today's guest, Rachelle Robinett, a registered herbalist and founder of Pharmakon Supernatural at yoursupernatural.com. Rachelle is also a writer and educator. She is author of Naturally, the Herbalist Guide to Health and Transformation. Naturally is beginner-friendly, a guide to herbalism, walking us through the 9 primary types of herbs, their benefits, and how to incorporate them into our existing routines for better gut health, sex, sleep, focus, and more. She's based in New York and Costa Rica. Now, for some people, when I read those words, one of them stood out. For me, it was sleep.
I
I'm kidding. It wasn't sleep. It was gut health. Everyone knows I'm the gut health guy. Are you in Costa Rica or New York?
Today I am in New York. I'm in Brooklyn.
And how do you do that? How are you based in both? Where do you spend more time?
Well, it depends. I would say in the last 12 months, I have spent more time in Costa Rica, and it's a fairly recent transition, I would say. So in the future, I'll be primarily in Costa Rica and come back to New York as needed. And in the past, I was based entirely in New York. But as it goes now, I've always prioritized work-life balance and primarily freedom. So I built my companies to enable me to be free. And periodically I disappear into the jungle and I live instead of work. It's wonderful.
Do you surf also in Costa Rica?
I definitely do. Yes. That's a big part of it.
I know my kids would love to go out there, and I know there's great surf out there. You're also, when you're in Costa Rica, not too far from where we are growing our aloe vera in Guatemala. I guess
beautiful.
I don't know, you're probably 300 or 400 miles away, something like that.
Yeah, close enough. Yeah, Guatemala is incredible.
Well, thank you for being on my show and joining me. I am curious, how did you get into herbalism? And it's kind of a loaded question because probably everyone listening is into herbalism, but they just don't know it.
Perfectly put. That's perfectly put. Yeah. And the story was similar for me. I was an herbalist long before I realized that that's what I was doing. I grew up on a farm in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State, and my parents worked in sort of Western and then natural or functional health, respectively. My dad was an anesthesiologist. My mom still works as a functional health practitioner. So I was exposed to a lot of these concepts very early on, surgery, medication. I went to work with my dad and saw bodies being operated on. We were outdoors from sunrise to sunset on the weekends. And then my mom was introducing us to supplements and the benefits of foods, and entertained any kind of sort of tangent that I wanted to explore, which were many. So I was exposed to all of it very early on. I didn't intend to make it my career. I moved to New York City to work in fashion. But since I was very, very young, I was fascinated by the relationship between the body and the natural world, and how what we consume in every sense affects our state. So that was where it began for me. And I studied, again, from the time I was very young, all of the world's healing traditions, all of the world's, spirituality, mysticism. I was sort of on a philosophical quest to try to understand the human experience. No small task. But it led me through a lot of different studies. And finally, much later on, I re-encountered herbalism. And I realized that herbalism encompasses pretty much all of that. It is not just plants as medicine. It's about the relationship between, our species and nature, one and the same. But of course, there's also a relationship there, and that it is about food as medicine. It's about plants as medicine. It's about our community. It's about our state of mind from an existential standpoint. It's about fitness. It's about everything holistically that makes up natural health. And when I realized that, I realized that's what I'm doing. That's who I am. And very long story short, I started my first company. I ended up with three ultimately in the herbalism space.
I'm sorry, which company was it that was in the herbalism space?
All three. So I ended up launching quite a few businesses over the course of a decade plus working in herbalism. We
Okay.
had products, a cafe, apothecary, private practice, lots of different iterations. So.
Oh, and what happened to those businesses? I know
Um,
that at least one of them still
Yeah,
around.
they two are still totally functional. The one that I closed was the physical space. We had a cafe apothecary for many years, serving teas and elixirs and retail and all of these things. But on the topic of living part time in Costa Rica, I realized that having a physical location ran counter to my deep, deep need for freedom. So eventually I closed that cafe and allowed myself to leave Brooklyn more often than is possible when you're running a physical store.
Yeah, even if it was like a herbal type of cafe, it's kind of like, I guess, being a restaurant owner, you're bound to
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Huh, interesting. When we talk about everyone practicing herbalism at some level,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. And the example I've heard you use was a lot of us wake up to coffee.
Hmm.
And certainly I did today. And in my family, even my 16-year-old daughter is practicing herbalism. She makes a concoction of ginger and garlic and black pepper and lemon juice, and she puts turmeric in it. And she just has a little swig every day. And for her, she notices that it helps keep her skin clearer.
Mm.
Uh, my wife and I, we keep a batch of fire cider in the refrigerator, which is just cultured everything you have in
Yeah.
the herbal drawer from, again, ginger and turmeric. You might chop up some onions and some garlic and all kinds of things and fill it up with apple cider vinegar and
Hmm.
let it ferment for a season. And then in the refrigerator it goes. And one of those things, you have a little swig when you feel you could use a little immune boost.
Hmm.
What are some other ways people are practicing herbalism and don't realize it?
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. Coffee, fire cider, all of our concoctions, any kind of spice that's in our spice cabinet, any kind of, we think of them as culinary herbs, basil, cilantro, thyme, oregano, rosemary. All of these are also highly medicinal. We consider them herbs. Essential oils are a common way that people are working with herbalism and don't realize it already. Many foods, of course. I mean, aloe vera is a perfect example. Food, medicine, blueberries are highly medicinal. Our food is our first medicine, and always has been, always will be. If you know local plants that are growing in your area, or if you go out and connect with nature. I mean, I live part time in New York City, but still manage to have a relationship with nature here. That is also practicing herbalism. So it can be something that we're consuming, by eating or drinking, but it may also be the light that we're consuming. It may be the air that we're consuming, it may be the view that we're consuming when we look, out and see a tree or go out and touch grass. all of that
Yeah.
is all of that is herbalism.
Have you studied the history of herbalism and any insight as to what it used to be like versus how it is now?
Well, that's an interesting question. I certainly have studied the history of herbalism, and of course, it has many different roots, if you will, in different places in the world. And I mean, it's ancient, of course, predates all of modern medicine, and much of modern medicine is, developed from it. How it used to be is much more of a way of life for all of us. It wasn't a supplement. It wasn't something extra that we did. It was the way that we lived. All cultures, had this proximity to nature that is different than what we have today, and a relationship, sometimes a kin type relationship. We considered plants and nature to be part of our family or extensions of ourselves. So it was really woven into all of our days, all the time. You can look at it, from the standpoint of the food. It can also be, considered from the standpoint of the rituals and the sort of deeper cleanses and healing practices that are undergone, ceremonial, celebrational, spiritual. But really, we just lived with nature, with plants, in a way that was much more connected and natural than it is now.
Yeah, because I kind of wonder what went wrong. How did we lose it? And people like us, study certain areas and bring it back into our lives. What went wrong? Do you think it's that, well, we stopped growing our own food, or did big pharma kind of blind us? What happened?
Yeah, it was a little earlier than big pharma. Generally, it's considered, especially here in the US, that is, the development of germ versus terrain theory. And I know you've talked about that on this podcast before. That was really the point when herbalism and nature and, dirt and germs and bacteria and disease and these sorts of things became separated from our lives. The development of modern medicine and the scientific theory and the idea that, in germ theory, really sort of created this break between two different methods of treating health and relegated herbalism and these natural approaches to alternative, in quotes. These are alternative therapies, but real health and real medicine involves, vaccination, which is, it's an important topic, and antibiotics and sterilization, and this distancing from, the natural world. So that break was the point in which herbalism sort of lost its, I don't know, I wouldn't say lost its credibility necessarily, but in certain camps did, or from a sort of top down standpoint did. It was relegated to the sidelines as alternative. And since then has essentially remained that way. I think, what's happening now with the wellness industry and the resurgence of interest in these sorts of things and awareness about these ingredients and herbs, it feels new again because it's been separated from us for so long. A lot of people haven't even heard of herbalism. So, yeah.
It's kind of weird because, back in the 70s and 80s for me, the grandmas were the ones that were practicing the herbalism, and they had an answer for everything.
Yes.
And it's not that way anymore. And it's probably because, the grandmas at that time were the last generation connected to a time when it was still practiced and used and had the knowledge there of what to do. But I feel like, we just lost so much knowledge and practice of these things.
It's true. It is true. And I can't tell you how many times I hear that, it was a grandmother, it was a grandfather that knew. And yes, generationally, we have lost that ability to two things. I think that ability to think about ingredients from the natural world first and as effective enough to treat whatever we might, want to treat. And then I think we've also lost much of the ability to listen to our own bodies, relate to them, and understand what symptoms might be saying to us, because we have so much access to the immediate gratification of symptom satisfaction, as I call it, via medication, which is not ideal. So
I'm laughing because that's a term I haven't heard. Symptom satisfaction, and it's absolutely true.
Yeah,
You know, I have a fever. Oh, take this and you lowered it. Hey, I fixed it.
exactly.
No, you didn't. You just
Exactly.
changed the symptom. You didn't
Exactly.
fix the cause of it. In
Mhm.
fact, you may have let the cause of it grow
Mhm.
by removing the fever.
Mhm.
You enjoying the show thus far? One of the many health secrets that we have covered on the show is all around aloe vera, specifically drinking raw aloe vera. Our aloe vera has helped our customers effectively heal their gut, increase their intestine health, lower inflammation in the body, eliminate and/or decrease acid reflux, have glowing skin and hair, and so much more. Now, as a frequent member of our audience, you will be exposed to exclusive specials and coupon codes for the awesome products manufactured by Haley Nutrition. That's right, for simply being awesome and tuning in, you can get a mini discount to help you optimize and better your health. To see how we can help and support you on your health journey, tune into the episodes and listen for coupon codes that you can use at www.haleynutrition.com before you make your orders of raw aloe vera. Once again, it's www.haleynutrition.com. Now, back to the show.
When people are challenged symptomatically and they want to consider herbalism as a potential remedy,
Mhm.
where would you recommend they start?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is why I wrote my book. I think that can be the largest hurdle for people is where do I start with herbalism? And, there are thousands and thousands of herbs. But the easiest way to approach and understand herbalism, I think, this is the way I learned as well, it's the way I've always taught, is to know that there are categories of herbs. And those categories correspond to different systems in our body. For example, the nervous system or the gut or the musculoskeletal system. So, whatever symptoms we are challenged by, we can go and find that corresponding category of herbs. That said, if somebody is not inclined to do that, or that feels even too complicated, and they don't want to buy my book because that will take you all the way through, then I would recommend going to a health food store or finding a local herbalist or finding someone who has a knowledge of this information, this practice. And it can be as simple as getting a capsule of a blend of herbs for your need. I don't, capsules are the most removed way to work with the plants, but they're the easiest. And I think I like to illustrate that point because I like people to know that it doesn't mean you have to be brewing complicated, bitter teas and drinking them all day. It doesn't mean you have to understand tinctures. It can be a supplement on your shelf next to the rest of your supplements. That can be how you start with herbalism. And if that's as far as you ever go, that's fine too. So it really, the barrier to entry can be lowered, all the way down, and we can just dip a toe in. It can be that easy.
Yeah, I like going closest to the real food source, and I always have. I remember when I was in college, at the time, I was training hard and I wanted to build muscle. And, all my friends they were on the juice. They were going to the
Yeah.
medications, getting injected with all kinds of stuff. And I had heard that yohimbe would,
Mm.
naturally do the same thing. So the local health food store would actually sell yohimbe bark, and I'd get a bag of it and just throw some in the blender. Now it's funny because nowadays I realize people aren't using it for building muscle, but they're using it for male potency.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and instead of it coming in bark, it might be either bark in capsules or it may have been turned into a tablet. And there's other ways of getting it. But I like going back to the original root or whatever it might be, herb, spice, food base. And I appreciate the convenience of capsules, which are probably that exact same thing, just encapsulated,
Mm-hmm.
or possibly sometimes in the case of tinctures where they had been properly prepared and you feel good about it. When you start getting to the tablets, I start getting a little concerned. Do I really know that that's an herbal something? The capsules, where it's, you open them up and you can sprinkle it and look at it and say, oh, that's
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
that's turmeric powder, or that's definitely, whatever the case it is. Um,
Yeah.
what's your preference, and how far can you go before you're concerned that you're not actually getting what the
Yeah.
label says?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I too prefer to be as close to the whole plant form as possible. That said, there are some herbs that we like the standardized extract of, and you need to find that in a capsule. We might want a higher dose of curcumin, for example. So we get a curcumin supplement that also includes whole turmeric because that's important for bioavailability. Or we want a standardized extract of, L-dopa from Mucuna pruriens, another herb. We call that one dopamine bean. I like to brew teas. I really like to work with tinctures actually, because it's a concentrated extract. You don't need very much, but you can still taste it. You can still see it. You can see the bright red, beautiful color of St. John's wort, one of the most gorgeous tinctures that exists. That's an herb that works on the nervous system and functions as an antidepressant. I love kava in tincture form. That's my favorite alternative to alcohol. You can taste it, you can see it. It's beautiful. It's strange. It makes your mouth numb. However, because I travel a lot and I use a lot of herbs, when I travel, they're in capsule form. Maybe everything except for my kava might be in capsule form. I don't use tablets. I generally don't find those to be potent, high quality, or common in the high quality herbal supplement market. But capsules I like very much. I think it's very easy to dose them. And for example, if we're working with ashwagandha, ashwagandha needs to be dosed quite high. And that's a lot of powder or a lot of tincture for somebody to take every day, but it's a couple of capsules. So those can be very effective. But I do encourage people, if they're already working with herbs and they have no idea what the herb looks like or tastes like or, feels like, and they're using it, in capsule form, at some point, like seek it out and get familiar with it in its natural form. Even if it's just to sort of acquaint yourself with what you're taking, I think that's a really nice way to improve our relationship with what we're consuming.
You mentioned traveling. When you travel, what are some of your tinctures, herbal capsules, or whatever it is that you feel you have to take with you?
Yes, good question. I was just considering that this morning because I'm going on a long trip that is, I will take only a backpack. And I thought, okay, I need to pare down my routine. What am I taking? So I will probably I take a couple of herbs in the mornings for hormone balance and liver support. I really like to start my day that way. So it's a blend of Vitex, black cohosh, licorice, and milk thistle. I will bring that. I will bring a strong turmeric boswellia blend that I have, just for general kind of inflammation, overall health, immune system support, that sort of thing. And I'll probably leave my kava at home. And then for the evenings, I think I'm trying to take it down to just 3 supplements a day. Or 3 herbs a day. For the evenings, I'll probably bring tryptophan, not an herb, but an amino acid that I really like for sleep support. Also a little bit of mood support. I've become very well acquainted with my neurochemical balance and know that amino acids like L-theanine, 5-HTP, tryptophan, those are very good for me to have in my life. So that's probably the little stack that I'll take with me, those 3.
That's good. I have my favorites. And as we talk about this, it's kind of funny because some of it also depends on whether we're driving or flying.
Yes.
And
Yes.
my wife and I, when we are driving, we like cold coffee in the morning. We have iced
Mhm.
coffee. It's, a nice organic dark roast because we like
Mhm.
that little bite in it. And then
Mhm.
it's our creamer is organic coconut milk with our protein powder mixed in, which has a
Mm.
nice vanilla and stevia. So it's very natural, and it almost tastes like a some kind of frappuccino, but
Mm-hmm.
there's no sugar in it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't get anything like that anywhere else. So for driving, we'll actually make a few jars of it and keep it in the cooler with us, and we'll time it out and make sure we have enough so we can all have our coffee in the morning for however many days we're gone.
Nice.
We have to take our powdered fruits and vegetables
Mm-hmm.
because they seem to give us a little extra energy. Not that you feel it like when you're drinking coffee, but it's you get through the whole day without crashing when you
Yeah.
have all those nutrients from the powdered fruits and vegetables. Um, so we have our things that we need. We take our aloe vera with us
Mm-hmm.
enough. We're going to drink this much per day, and we make sure we pack that when we're driving. We can't take our coffee and our aloe on the airplanes, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of the greens powders, which generally have the fruit in them as well. But I don't think I'll be taking that on my backpack trip. Feels maybe like a little too much.
Yeah, but for us, it's a necessity, so
Oh,
we
yeah.
we have to take it, and that we can take on the plane. But
Mm.
yeah, we travel with more than a backpack, so I get it. People are ill, I always like to remind them that there's two sides to the equation.
Hmm.
The first, which I actually consider to be more important, is causation.
Mm-hmm.
What's the cause? What's your experience with that?
Absolutely, positively agree. And I mean, so much of my work with clients and in educating broadly and in the book, is about seeking the cause. There's a whole process of education, I think re-education, because as we were saying before, it's been lost in guiding people back to this ability that we do all have, but we may not have learned in this generation or the previous generation, or the generation before that, but how to listen to our bodies, how to relate to our bodies. And of course, it is not always possible to know the cause of our insomnia or our headache or our pain or what, our brain fog, whatever it is. But in many, many, many cases, it is. And even if it's not, in the process of seeking that cause, we just deepen our relationships with our body. We learn how to listen and how to communicate better. And that will only serve us better in the long run. So, I mean, it's something I say over and over and over again. And herbalism and all herbalists also think that way. Of course, there are plants that can help medicate, acute symptoms, but no herbalist will give you only that recommendation. They will seek the cause with you and attempt to treat, either the cause first or both at the same time. And I think, yeah, there's so many examples of that, but it is one of the key points in health in general, herbalism or otherwise. We really need to try to re-relate with our bodies and seek the causes of the way that we feel.
Yeah, and I want to dig in a little deeper on this because, well, I know I've vocalized this many times, and I have my ways of saying it, and you'll have your unique ways, and you might communicate to someone listening better than I can. And I really want people to understand this when it comes to being well or treating a condition or getting over your problems. Most of it can be done just by getting rid of the cause. Yet, if we have these other beneficial things that we can do alongside it, if we don't address the cause and we're taking, I happen to be drinking, well, it looks like I'm practicing urotherapy, I guess, if you see this on YouTube, but it's actually a little ginger water.
Hmm.
And that could decrease inflammation and maybe decrease pain. And if I needed this to be pain-free, as an example, and I never addressed the cause of the pain, then this has become nothing other than a drug, because now I'm practicing medicine. I'm just treating a symptom.
Mhm.
You want to get to the cause, get rid of the cause of the problem, and the symptoms will probably go away. I think I'm drinking, fresh juice ginger in my water because it just, to me, it feels good, and that's what my body craves, and I kind of like it. So why not?
Yeah.
Which goes into another thing that you were talking about, and listening to your body. And you can figure out the cause of your problems if you pay attention. And if you go through a list of things, you can even maybe go through categories. Is it my nutrition? Is it my exercise? Is it my rest? Is it my mental well-being? Is my nervous system not working right? And we start, it doesn't really feel like it'd be any of these, but it's probably in this area. Or maybe it's, my exercise is lacking. Okay, what kind of exercise is it? Is it, flexibility, endurance, agility training, strength training? What's lacking? And well, those first three didn't, but that one kind of made a little sense. Okay, let's focus on that one now and drill down as deep as we can till we figure out what's missing.
Yeah.
And if people could just learn to pay attention to that, our bodies are so dang smart.
It's true.
And they're kind of smarter than we are, which doesn't really make sense because we're in our bodies. But somehow they're going to take the things that we eat. The knowledge in us is going to take the things that we eat and knit it into living tissue to replace things that need to be replaced. How does that happen? And if it's that smart and we can learn to pay attention to it. Now, I think where, we'll differ all in our own ways is who we interpret or how we interpret that knowledge, where it might come from.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I would say it's God. For others, they might say it's universal intelligence, or it doesn't matter. We could all listen to it better.
Yeah.
Regardless of our own interpretation, we can all tune in and learn from and follow that voice. And if it's barely, audible, eventually you'll hear it more and more the more you practice paying attention.
Yeah, it's true. It's beautifully said. And I completely agree. I think I would add two things. One is that, when we focus on those primary pillars of health, nutrition, fitness, sleep, community, essentially the blue zone, pillars, those generally, when we can dial those in, we are then left with so much less to treat, maybe nothing if we do them really well, but so much less to treat. So that's one vote for those. I mean, those pillars of health have never changed also. They are not as sexy as taking adaptogens or nootropics or, hacking this or, whatever, but they work. And we know that, and we see that in the world, in the communities that live, to be so much older than the rest of us, because this is just their way of life. And the other thing I would say is that, we might want that, immediate gratification, get rid of our pain or whatever else. But when we treat ourselves from a cause first approach, that is how lasting healing is created. That is how lasting change is created. So if we want to do away with the pain, now fine. But if we don't want to have it again, then we really need to dig down and in. And when we do that, I've seen it over and over again. Not only does health transform, but people's lives change. Their lives change because their health changes, and their lives also change because they learn how to relate with themselves, understand perhaps what they truly want in life, or their motivations for doing certain things. Or I think it leads to this sort of rediscovery of who one really is. Or what I also like to say is it can lead us back to our true nature. And when we really get in touch with ourselves and we can hear, ourselves and see ourselves, then a lot more can change than our health if we want it to. So there's a lot of reward for that work, a lot of reward.
Thank you for tuning in to the Dr. Haley Show podcast. because you made it this far, I have a special coupon code that you can use throughout the month of July 2025. Get $10 off your purchase of $100 or more at HaleyNutrition.com. The coupon code is July 2025. That's JULY 2025. And as usual, you can even use this coupon with on sale and already discounted bundled items. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. Yeah, for those that are practicing herbalism to overcome something, okay, so be it. But wouldn't it be nice, and I agree with you, that if we're focusing on those 5 pillars of health, that we're probably going to be well, even if we have a genetic predisposition towards these things, because those genes aren't going to be able to express themselves. Correct. So wouldn't it be nice if we were just practicing herbalism instead of to recover, to optimize our human potential? Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes.
We have all of these.
That would be very nice. I am an advocate for that, and I think even to think about it that way and to know that, as we were saying in the beginning, it used to be a part of our lives every day, all the time. It isn't something extra. It's not a fad, a fad diet or a fad healing approach. This is in our genes. There are ways that plants connect with receptors in our bodies that are perfect fits. We evolved together. And to come back to this with that perspective that it can be a lifestyle, and that when done so, it's preventative of many, many conditions we don't want. I vote for that. Yeah.
I want you to help me and fix something that I've been teaching customers and patients, because if they apply this same technique that I've taught them to herbalism, they could probably get into a little trouble. And it goes like this. Someone will say, Dr. Haley, how much aloe vera should I drink? And initially I'll tell them, have a full glass every day for the first week, look in the mirror, and then at that point, ask yourself, how much do I want? And if that's not, suffice, if you're not getting to your answer, well, it's easy. You should have a whole half gallon every day. And they say, well, that's ridiculous. And they usually kind of chuckle like you just did. I'll say, I was just kidding. You should just get an eyedropper out and just put a drop on the tip of your tongue. And of course, I want more than that. Well, what were you hoping I would say? I was hoping you would say 5 ounces a day. Okay, there's your number. You just listened to the little voice and you brought it into your consciousness. But I have them drink a certain amount for that first week, just so that their body can kind of get used to it. Now, I happen to know that with our aloe vera, it's the inner leaf only. It doesn't have the outer leaf extract, which would have its own set of properties. We're not going to get into, trouble when it comes to, sitting on the pot all day or anything like that, or cramps and diarrhea. It's just the inner portion of the leaf, the calming, the healing, stimulate your immune system kind of thing. So you're not going to overdose on that. But you're not necessarily going to get the full benefit. More is not necessarily better. There's, diminishing returns. Here's the problem, and this is where I need your help. If they applied, and you can explain this, if they applied that same thing to drugs would be the obvious. Well, I feel like I should have 5. Okay, wait a second. 5 of what? When it comes to herbalism, there are some very potent plant medicines, so to speak. How do you figure out what the right amount is for you?
Yeah. Well, there are 2 easy ways to do that. I would say the easiest is to buy herbal products from reputable brands, good companies, many of which have been around for decades and decades and are founded by herbalists, and all of the products are made by herbalists. Nearly any product on the market right now has very clear dosing instructions. And this may seem obvious, but follow the dosing instructions. A lot of people don't do that.
Right.
Well, that is the easiest way. Another way would be to have a conversation with someone who knows about this sort of thing and understand, what is the dosage like for this certain herb. Now, there are very potent plants in herbalism, of course. The majority of herbalism is not so potent or dangerous, shall we say, that I would discourage anyone from doing some DIY, homemaking, make some teas, make some tinctures. That's how this was done. That's how this is done by many people still. And again, you're buying your herbs somewhere. So if you're buying your herbs at an herb shop or at the farmer's market or whatever, these things are not poisons, right? Those are not readily available. I think one has to try or be a bit reckless to really run into safety concerns with herbalism. The exception there is if you are taking pharmaceuticals or, prescription birth control or that sort of thing, any kind of medication, you should always check with your healthcare provider before mixing herbs with those. But even herb drug interactions that are dangerous are quite uncommon. And then, of course, that's another reason why I wrote this book. And I created a table that very clearly states, all the herbs listed in the book and more, what form to take them in, and any kind of notes regarding dosage or, is this better as a tea or a tincture or that sort of thing. But I would encourage anyone who's enthusiastic about, making some stuff in their kitchen to please do so. There are also very good medicine making books that teach you how to do fire ciders and tinctures and teas and syrups and all of the different formats. Those are exceptional guides. And there are herbalists all over the world who are excited to talk to anyone who wants to start practicing herbalism. They're very easy to seek out. And I guess just to give people a resource for that, the American Herbalists Guild is the main organizing body for herbalists in the United States, but they have a lot of resources beyond that. And you can just hop on that website and find hundreds of herbalists to be in touch with.
I like the caution that you gave, and I'm going to hold up my glass of ginger water again. And ginger can have some blood thinning, anti-inflammatory properties. And if I was taking blood thinners and maybe overdoing it on my ginger, that combined effect could cause internal bleeding, maybe ulcers, or who knows. A lot of times people that are taking the blood thinners, when you look at their arms, you see black and bluing in here, which is kind of like internal bleeding. If you start seeing something like that, maybe you got too much, ginger and medications combining together.
Yeah.
And need to make some adjustments. I'm not saying quit your drugs, but be careful what you're combining and do what you can to get off your medicines.
Yeah.
With the help of a doctor.
Yes, definitely. Agreed.
Someone that knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
What any information on your book? Is it out? Is it released? And we're recording this on July 15th. And I know your book is kind of new. I think this is probably going to publish around maybe July 25th. Is your book out?
My book will be published on July 22nd. So it's available for pre-order now. By the time this is published, it will be out in the world. And yeah, I have it here close to me. The Herbalist Guide to Health and Transformation. And the book is structured according to the categories of herbs. So in the beginning, you get a really thorough introduction to what herbalism is and how it's relevant for modern life. Really written for anyone who's never heard of herbalism. If you're already an herbalist, you will also learn things in this book. And then, the rest of the book includes case studies from the many clients I've seen. I explore the nervous system and nervine herbs for the nervous system. I talk about stress and balance with adaptogenic herbs. There's a chapter on gut health and bitter herbs. I have a chapter on aphrodisiacs and herbs for pleasure, also antidepressants and alternatives to alcohol. There's a chapter on sleep, energy and motivation. There's a chapter on some of the more potent plant medicines, psychedelics or entheogens that we use for really big kind of life changes or transformation. And then in the back of the book are a lot of resources that I think will be very helpful for people. There's the herb table. It's quite large and it lists, all these plants and how to take them. There's also a set of recipes, really simple recipes for people who want to include herbs into things like smoothies or salad dressings or trail mix or, mocktail. Lot of resources in there. So it's available now, and I hope it changes some lives. I think it will.
It's funny because I'm on my ginger kick right now, and I've been wanting to make a ginger salad dressing. And do you have a recipe for that one?
I think you should make the salad dressing. There's a salad dressing plus functional mushrooms. And I would make that one and just add ginger. It has garlic in it as well, but you could definitely like shred some ginger into it or even just chop some ginger. That actually, now I want to make that. That sounds great. And I think I have a ginger shot recipe in there as well. I love ginger shots. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I have a salad dressing that I like to make with, mustard and some other herbs and garlic and stuff like that with olive oil and balsamic vinegar dressing kind of thing. Absolutely delicious. And, but I might have to check out some of your recipes and say, how could I make this my own?
Please do. And, one last note I would say, I'm not a huge fan of recipes because as we've been talking about this whole time, I like people to think for themselves. So I provided recipes, but all of the recipes are sort of templates. And they are meant to be customized and personalized. And that also makes for no excuses for not making the recipe because you don't like the way a certain herb tastes, that just swap it out for something else. So please, yes, make it your own.
Now, you've been very educational on this podcast. I want you to be a little selfish. What are some of the other products that you have available?
Oh, thank you. I have a line of herbal gummies. So we produce herbal gummies that are, a lot of people wonder if there's cannabis or CBD in those because I think that's such a common thing. But these are just herbal gummies. They're equivalent to an herbal tea in gummy form. And then I have some online herbalism classes as well. I think, if people are looking to learn more or connect more with me, what I would encourage most of all is to sign up for our newsletter. We send a weekly newsletter and it is herbalism and so much more. And that's the best way to kind of hook in and connect with the community and see everything else that's going on over here because there are always new and exciting things going on. But thank you for that.
Great. And you have a couple different websites. There's the UR, that's the letter U, the letter R, supernatural.com. And there's also RachelleRobinett.com.
Yeah. So we have this as I transition into more writing and transition out of being an entrepreneur, which I was for at least a decade. My main website is RachelleRobinett.com. The yoursupernatural.com gives you a really good picture of kind of all of the history and portfolio of businesses that I've had over the years. So people are welcome to explore either. There are probably hundreds of free articles, podcasts, videos, recipes, and you can visit either site. Eventually those will be combined, but right now, explore as you please. And yeah, if you like free stuff, it's all there.
All right. Is there anything that you wish I asked that I had left out?
I love that question. No, this was a great conversation. I loved it. And I really appreciate being here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. And I'll make sure that I have links below the video on YouTube, below the podcast, whether you're on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you're getting the content. When you're on iTunes, I don't know about Spotify, but you can't actually click it. You got to copy and paste into the browser. But I'll make sure I have those web addresses available so you can find out more from Rachelle Robinett. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed that episode today on the Dr. Haley Show. Make sure to hit subscribe on whichever platform you are listening to this. If this episode made you think of someone, go ahead, take a screenshot, and share this exact episode with them. You can catch the show notes for this episode on www.drhaley.com. If you want to geek out with Dr. Michael Haley on other radical health topics, be sure to check out his YouTube channel, where he posts exclusive video content. All the details are at www.drhaley.com, and we can't wait to hang out with you on the next episode.